I want to ask you about his vision, right? Scott Harris talked about his vision. He said, I want to acquire, develop, and retain young talent. He wants
Mhm.
to make sure that he keeps those guys, which almost sounds like an Atlanta Braves type strategy. I think what the Braves have done with their young talent and extending
Yes,
them early is just
it's brilliant.
genius. It is. Like get those guys off of worrying about arbitration and free agency
Yep.
and keep that core of your group together for 7, 8, 9 years and pay them. It might be a little bit less than their value, but there's a give and take there. But then he also talked about commanding the strike zone, which we know for this historically bad offense this year. I mean, we're talking about coming in and scoring less runs than the 2019 team, scoring less runs than the 2003 team, and striking out an awful lot. Do you think that he's basically saying, "Hey, here's the flair, and everybody needs to be on notice"?
What I thought was the most prominent part of that whole introductory address was just that, the strike zone concentration, because clearly this was going past the point of the normal, well, we're going to ask our hitters to swing at strikes and we're going to throw low fastballs for strikes, et cetera, et cetera. That's normally what you get. And that's what
Mhm.
you got from the Tigers for decades. This guy is going to make sure that on base average and that fewer strikeouts rather than more is going to be a requisite skill for their lineup people. He's going to make sure that people like Gregory Soto don't come into a ball game leaving all of his teammates worried about how many he's going to put on base. That
Right.
stuff is not going to fly with Scott Harris. And
And it
that's why I
shouldn't
thought,
fly.
no, and it shouldn't fly is right. And that's why I thought for him to make this the second point of his address tells you that this is going to be sacrosanct with him. And it will. And that's great. Now, they haven't really gotten serious with on base average in their drafts until this year. Notice, though, how they finally got religion. But it's all been so late. The
Yeah.
question abounds, why wasn't this stuff done earlier? And that's going to be Al's epitaph.
Mhm.
Why wasn't this stuff done earlier? And that to me is where the scouts and the scouting directors bear a tremendous responsibility for the simple fact this roster has been so absolutely deficient at 7-year mark of the rebuild. Now, a year ago, we were not having this conversation. It looked like things
Mm-mm.
were on track. But that ended up being kind of a false floor. And, this year, even though this was such a sadistic year,
It was.
the injuries were, you can't even measure anything by this
Well, I
year.
mean, you make the trade for
Didn't.
Austin Meadows, right? And
Yeah. And then
who
he
expects him to get vertigo and 2 Achilles injuries and then also dealing, with mental health issues, which we hope
right.
that he's doing well. Like, we
Yes.
wish him the best, but who expected that? And then the guy that you trade him for or traded to the Rays for him goes off. And look, Paredes has not been phenomenal, but he's hit 20 home runs. He leads their team in
Yeah.
home runs, and it's like, okay, maybe you gave up on him a little bit too early, but there's certain things you would have needed a crystal ball for, like you said um, earlier. Um, I want to go back to that on base percentage, right? That you were talking about, and why didn't they do this earlier? You have for a long time reading your tweets and conversing with you. You are not a fan of the dimensions of Comerica Park, and so my question is, and this is a little bit off script, but AJ said it last week. Like we can't. Riley Green hit that massive bomb to center field that got caught right at the wall. Right, it just should have been a home run in just about every other ballpark. And AJ says, listen, we play here 81 times a year. We can't pout. We can't complain about the dimensions. We got to build a roster that fits the ballpark, right? When Scott Harris comes in and on the broadcast with Bally Sports starts quoting OPS plus, right? The on base plus slugging adjusted to your park. I think that's a sign that fans can be like, oh, this is going to be a little bit different.
Except my question, AJ, is the question I've asked from the start. How do you build a hitter to deal with 81 games at Comerica Park and 81 at the rest of the big league parks? It's completely mad science.
It
How do
is.
you deal with the fact that Riley Green, who's a good hitter, or Spencer Torkelson, who is a good hitter and going to be a really good hitter, are occasionally going to hit the ball 425 feet because they hit it really well, and expect them to live with the out, and you are expected to get a roster that somehow deals with this nonsense? Let's go back to the start. Comerica Park was built to protect lousy pitchers and to punish good hitters. I repeat, Comerica Park was laid out to protect bad pitching and to be punitive to good hitters.
Yeah, you were there right in the middle of it when they were building it.
And I said before it was ever opened, I said, change it now because you're just going to have to fix this thing later. Sure enough, after 2 years, well, then Dave Dombrowski came in, and he didn't even know how bad it was until he saw that first full season as GM. By the end of the year, they had plans then to relocate the bullpens, pull that absurd left field in, et cetera, et cetera. But they only fixed part of it. They still
Mhm.
had left center all the way to right center, 437, 430, 425. Look, you
Yeah,
can't simply, well, let's get speed and line drive hitters. Every team wants speed and line drive hitters. They're going to hold up in any ballpark. But
right.
what you're going to do is take your power hitters who occasionally can hit a ball 425 feet, and you're just going to say, sorry, Charlie, you should have blooped one in there. That
Yeah.
is the most asinine philosophy for stadium design I have ever seen, and they've lived with it for 23 years.
Well, and
Enough.
what people forget is that back wall of the bullpen was the original wall, if I'm not mistaken, right? The Tigers bull that
That
was
was
the
the hit
original
it out.
wall
You had
that
to
they
clear
moved.
the bullpen in order to hit a home run there.
And how many balls nowadays do we see clearing? Like, not a ton. And I wonder how, the effect that had on Miguel because,
Oh,
Miguel is that, he's right center field gap kind of guy. Like, he likes to push the ball that way. So, I mean, yeah, it definitely killed a few home runs that he's
oh,
hit for
Chris
sure.
And if you saw Chris McCaskey's story this week, he had it all boiled down statistically. It's cost Miguel Cabrera 100 home runs. He'd be at 600 instead of 500, and that's legitimate. JD Martinez lost tons there. Maglio, I don't care who you're talking about.
Yeah.
They've all paid the price. Well, people say, but it's still run neutral, and no, don't give me that nonsense. You get a lot of bloop singles there because
Sure.
outfielders play so deep
Hmm.
that you're going to have. There's no integrity to a bloop single beating the ball that's just been crushed 430 feet to the auxiliary scoreboard and ends up as an F8.
No,
See
especially when you talk about runs expectancy, right? Like run expectancy 24, all those different analytics. It's
that's
a
where
bloop
statistics.
single is not worth a home run.
And right, and that's where numbers can be distorted and where they outright can lie.
Right.
So it's all you do, AJ, to fix that thing is you pull, and they're going to apparently finally do it after.
Oh,
Yeah,
they are, huh?
yeah. Chris's story this past week and a half or so. I had it all laid out, and I would invite you to go back and read
I
that.
will. I
It's a
actually missed
tremendous
that one,
piece.
so I will.
Yeah, they're going to finally do something about it because
Good.
Inch and everyone have finally seen now that they've got Torkelson Green, which is exactly what I said before they were called up. I said, you're just going to ruin these kids with this craziness, this
Well, and
insanity.
you saw that with Torkelson in his first 198 at bats. He's trying to push everything to right center field because that's where the biggest gap is, and he's late on everything.
It just messes up good hitters. And that's the
Yeah.
worst thing you can do to guys who are assigned the most difficult feat in all of sports. So I've been screaming about it for 25 years for a good reason. I think
You're being heard, Lynn. You're finally being heard.
it's injustice. It's always been absolutely uh, sadistic, and
Mhm.
they're finally, I think, going to get off their stubbornness and fix it.
Hopefully before next season, or are these plans
Yeah,
for, like
yeah, I
oh,
think so.
Interesting. That's gonna be fantastic.